Bienvenidos, familia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Pan Amazing Tours, the channel where we discuss life in Panama as expats and connect people with the tools to help them relocate or vacation here in Panama. I'm your host and guide, Big Will, and I first want to thank you all for tuning in. Today, we'll be discussing some crucial updates to the ongoing nationwide protests happening here in Panama. If you missed the first episode, I definitely encourage you to go back and watch it, as it covers the what and why with great detail. For a quick recap, since the third week of October, Panamanians all across the country have been engaging in protest over a recent mining contract awarded to a Canadian mining company called First Quantum. The protests have mainly been nonviolent, civil disobedient events that disrupt the natural flow of street and highway traffic throughout the country. Unfortunately, we are here today because the violence has been introduced into the picture recently. But before we get into those details, let's take a step back and discuss the nature of protesting itself. Based upon the many conversations being had across social media and my own lived experience as a protester in the United States, it is beyond obvious that a large portion of folks out there just don't get it. So let's help them understand. Let's start with paraphrasing the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Protest is the language of the unheard. It is what happens when a group of people feel completely marginalized and powerless in a given situation. It is how a collective group can get their voices and demands heard by a government or a group of people in power. And it is a far better option than the alternative. The alternative is open rebellion and revolution, just like the French did in the 1700s when they took Marie Antoinette's head. As a 54-year-old Black man who was born shortly after the death of Dr. King, I am a firm believer in protesting injustice. My father is a pastor in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, a denomination that itself was created in 1819 when a formerly enslaved man named Richard Allen was not allowed to pray at the altar of the white Methodist church he attended. My father also marched in the civil rights movement, so I was born literally into the idea of protesting injustice. I watched him lead people to fight for their rights in terms of education and housing and much more growing up. I have marched myself many times and for many different causes. My first march was with Jimmy Carter in grade school to help the homeless. I marched with Hosea Williams as a college freshman to protest an all-white county in Georgia. I've marched for women's rights, including the Bring Back Our Girls rally at the Nigerian Embassy in D.C., and of course, the 2017 Women's March in D.C. with the pink pussy hats. I've marched in remembrance of marches, like the March on Washington, and to protest what happened to the June 6th, Trayvon Martin, and Eric Garner, as well as several Black Lives Matter marches to call for an end to police brutality. Suffice it to say, I am a true believer in protest because it changes things. I see many comments on my channel and across social media from people who have never been marginalized, expressing their selfish views and questioning the tactics of civil disobedience, which is quite odd considering that many of these same people love to celebrate their patriotism. I guess they just don't see the Boston Tea Party in the same light as other protests. I mean, it was a protest, and they hurt themselves. Those protesting at the Boston Tea Party actually made life worse for themselves as the British punished everyone. With this background in mind, let's jump into what happened here recently. This past week, a man named Kenneth Darlington decided to up the ante and take matters into his own demented hands. Darlington is a 77-year-old American with dual citizenship in Panama, as he was born here in the Canal Zone during the American occupation of Panama. He is just like Senator John McCain in this regard. He is also an attorney who just so happens to work for the firm representing First Quantum, the mining company at the very heart of these protests. Darlington decides to run some errands with his friends. In this video, you can see what happens. They run into a protest that was blocking the highway, and Darlington is reported to have told his friends, "This ends today." We can see him approaching the protesters and basically ordering them to move. Then after a while, he starts waving his gun around. Now keep in mind, these protests here were started with the teachers union, so most of the protesters are women. He asked the women, "Where are the men in charge?" He was told there are none and that we are the people. Now eventually, some men walk up to try to help diffuse the situation as they can clearly see there's a crazy gringo acting up. Then Darlington shoots and kills one of the men and shoots the other. Then he starts trying to clear the street as if nothing happened. He eventually gets back to his car and tells his friends, "Let's go." They asked him, "Do you realize what just happened?" And he tells them, "Yeah, I killed a guy and shot another." His friends call the national police and refuse to leave the scene. Darlington is then apprehended a short time later. The police said he was reloading his gun when they approached him. Woosah. Now, this is far from the first time American citizens have killed unarmed Panamanians protesting. In the 1960s, our troops here killed several Panamanian high school students who were only attempting to fly the Panamanian flag. They were in the canal zone when doing it. For those who don't know, the United States controlled a great deal of territory on both sides of the canal. 5 miles on each side, it was considered the canal zone and was off limits to Panamanians. And of course, that caused some bad feelings. Some of those feelings are present in this mining protest, in fact. Now, those students wanted to protest simply by flying a flag and were killed for doing it. Now, there's a holiday here called Martyrs' Day to celebrate and remember their sacrifice. It's one of two holidays that are the result of American aggression here. And now Kenneth Darlington just created two more martyrs. Look, I really wish I could tell you that he will face the real justice he so richly deserves for this heinous act, but I would be lying if I did. It turns out that Panama is an extremely humane country and doesn't believe in putting anyone over 70 years old in prison. Elderly criminals serve their time on house arrest here, and Darlington is already out on bail. In my opinion, this act was premeditated. He is an attorney who was born in Panama and he knows these rules quite well. It is very disturbing. And even more disturbing is the reaction of many North American expats here. Some are even cheering for him, just as we witnessed people in the U.S. cheering and donating to Kyle Rittenhouse after he killed protesters in Wisconsin. And it appears that some of these people are even planning a counter protest. Huh? Really? Again, as I said earlier, these actions for the most part are coming from people who have never been marginalized themselves and have no clue what it feels like to be ignored or denied access. If you have never had a vote or a court decision decide whether or not you have rights as a human being, you might need to have a seat when it comes to discussing protest. Just a thought. Let me take a quick second to say that if you're planning on relocating from the US or Canada to any other place on this planet, especially in Panama, please, please, please leave the imperialism and the hate where it belongs. We don't need to export any more hate, and we certainly don't need any more colonialism. You feel me? Enough said. The protests are continuing in spite of Kenneth Darlington's foolishness. In fact, they appear to be intensifying after a brief lull out of respect for the funerals of those who were killed. There have been calls for a 72-hour period of protests that will stop everything. We are still waiting to see if this happens. Also, their Supreme Court of Justice will make an announcement this week about whether the mining contract was even constitutional. The local press seems to believe they will strike the contract down. Maybe that will end the protest. We will see. That's it for this episode, and hopefully my last needed update on these protests. For those looking to travel here in the next few weeks, as long as you're planning to stay in Panama City itself, move forward with your plans. If you are trying to reach the interior, this includes Coronado, El Valle, Bocas, Del Toro, David, Chiriquí. Look, you really might want to reschedule your trip. It is possible to move around at night, and there are professional driving services doing this for folks. I actually have a great referral for anyone who needs to get from Panama City to the interior. Just leave me a comment if you need it. And I want to remind everyone looking to relocate here that we offer services to help you. You can schedule a video chat consultation to discuss your plans or ask questions. We offer a relocation guide for the do-it-yourselfers out there. This guide covers what you need to do for visas, how to handle your finances, locating real estate, and even what to do with your fur babies. We also offer comprehensive 5-day relocation tours designed to show you available real estate while introducing you to your immigration attorney, as well as a healthcare provider to help keep you healthy. With that said, again, thanks so much for joining us today. Please, please, please do us the favor of liking and subscribing before you go. Maybe even share with a friend. We look very forward to joining you again very soon. Ciao.